and everybody gets all prepped up. Well, how's it going? You know, Alicia, I want to say thank you for reaching out and asking me to be the host for our California Main Street Happy Hour. So after that dance break, thank you, Marnie, for hosting that. Thank you, Amanda, for grabbing some music. I thought it'd be a good time to crack open our favorite beverages for our happy hour. So if you have your drinks, and I know that we're starting early, why don't you take some time to grab your glass. I thought I'd use a Humboldt Bay Provisions glass right over in Eureka's Old Town. I think this is one of my favorites. And since it is happy hour, I have two Dick Taylor chocolates to choose from. We have the brown butter, but I thought I'd go with the whiskey, straight bourbon downtown chocolate. So before we start out with our presentation, I thought I'd exit out of this view and say, for those of you that have your goodies box, featured in the Eureka goodie box to feel like we are actually there in Old Town Eureka for the conference, there's a Dick Taylor brown butter bar, a Justine Company live redwood tree sapling. You don't need to plant that right now, but it's in the box. A super cute crab sticker by Just My Type Letterpress, and Humboldt's finest espresso from Humboldt Bay Coffee, and grab your Eureka pint glass and tote bag. I think there's a few goodie boxes. Thank you. Yeah, I'll pour my, Amanda, thank you. Over in Eureka, I'm gonna pour my beer right now. This is Woody's Brewing, one of our downtown businesses. So I'll try not to spill it. So cheers to you guys. That was a terrible pour, but that's okay. For those of you who have your goodie boxes, why don't you pop them open, and we're gonna get started with our presentation. And we have two incredible presenters from Arcata Main Street, Miss Shoshanna and Eric Vollmers, for historic haunted tours. And we'll get to that in a second. Alicia, can you pull up our presentation? Perfect. Let's go gallery view.
One moment, apologies, it disappeared on me.
That's okay.
Let me find it again. I got so excited about my goodie box.
Cheers to everybody.
Showing it off.
And it's good bone. It's good head. Amanda, what are you drinking on over there? Oh, there's two
Amanda
Amandas.
Elliott.
Miss Amanda Elliott, what did you pour yourself?
Well, I have a taste of Richmond glass here, and I am drinking some lemonade.
That sounds delicious. And Miss Amanda over from Eureka, do you have any Humboldt cider or Lost Coast Brewery on your desk?
No, I still have work to do. Unfortunately.
Oh, me too. Okay, everybody. Well, my name is Blake Fisher. I'm the program coordinator of Viva Downtown. I want to say thank you to the California Main Street Partners for having me host this presentation. And I've worked with Viva for 3 years. We're currently in the oldest brick structure in Reading at the IOOF Hall. And I know at the fall conference, John Truitt was able to share a little bit about Viva Downtown. So you can find that on the CAMS YouTube page for updates on that. And I created a couple of slides to talk about our Reading, downtown Reading tourism efforts and put that together. So Alicia, thanks for having me host that. So next slide, we'll go through there. So what we learned today, we have our downtown collaborative partners. These are all of our organizations, nonprofits, performing groups that collaborate together to bring people to downtown for events and experiences. And learning from all of our hosts today, I'm excited to share that with our group at our monthly meeting. We'll go next slide. Downtown transformation strategies. I have to say thank you for talking about our work plans today, because I think some of the things that we were able to talk about and learn today are things that I'm excited to accomplish and achieve with our downtown transformation strategies from 2021 to 2023. And our Viva Downtown focus is with arts and entertainment and business support. And I think those are two themes that play into tourism efforts for a strong downtown community. We'll go next slide. So like all of you, we are excited to highlight and promote our businesses, especially now that California Main Street, California restrictions are lifting. And I know that a lot of our business owners across the country, maneuvered through restrictions, whether you're a restaurant moving outside, whether you're a store, changing your business to ship your products out. We're excited to see those businesses get back to the regular swing of things. Some of the things that we're working on is our Hops and Shops, which is our next Saturday event. And I'm proud to announce that we've been coordinating with 23 breweries, brands across the North State. And some partners that are going to be coming to Reading to highlight theirs are Eureka's Lost Coast Brewery and Humboldt Cider. And I know down in downtown SLO, we're going to have SLO Brewing coming up to Reading as well to represent their brand. So we're excited to feature that. And there are 23 downtown businesses that partner up with these brands for a walking, shopping, and craft beer tasting adventure. We're talking about downtown tourism and a few things. So I don't know if other main streets have specific tourism efforts like Visit California, but we have Visit Reading, which recently was acquired by the Reading Chamber of Commerce. And so with our downtown monthly business group, we partnered up with Danny Orloff, and he comes to our monthly meetings to share how businesses can get involved with promotion and marketing for the greater California and country regions. And so what Danny wanted to say is that Visit Reading is collaborating with partners to build content on current and upcoming events, art and cultural monuments to build interest in travel. And that's kind of the cool things that we can partner up with our Chamber of Commerce and Visit Reading to come on down to our areas. And Amanda, thanks for sharing visiteureka.com. Visit Eureka is located in a beautiful historic building as well. So I love that that's another component of it. We have our downtown discount cards, and I just want to say to all of our California main streets, your businesses are what make your downtown strong. So I love following you on Instagram and on Facebook to see you share your businesses. Let's go next slide. Arts and culture and entertainment. We have our Art Deco Cascade Historic Theater with about 999 seats. We recently just had a concert last weekend, and it was great to see performing arts return. They're about to have their local production of Matilda, so we get to see these seats filled up again, along with art pieces. Earlier in today, we talked about inclusion and representation. I love to see that all of our California main streets are finding art opportunities to create color, vibrancy, uniqueness, and inclusion and representation. And it's also nice to see live music return to our areas. We'll go next slide. And then with downtown development, downtown Reading has a couple of historic buildings, but a lot of our buildings were changed over 1970s downtown development. So we're proud to say that, with a lot of the construction in the 1970s, we had a giant parking structure that spanned all of California Street. And in recent years, we were able to remove that parking structure. And now we're going through Block 7 development to where instead of having a downtown that is just parking, we're redesigning the parking to go up instead of spread out. And we're expanding our Shasta College Community Leadership Program for education. We're moving 72 new units into downtown and creating more opportunities for businesses and storefronts to go on in. So it's nice to see that tourism falls under development for accessibility, arts and culture to bring people in, and business support so people can shop for economic vitality. And we'll go next slide. Thank you so much to California Main Street, because I wanted to go fast because we have two incredible presenters with our coastal neighbors and main streets. So Shoshanna, I hope you have your drink ready, and I'm so excited to hear about the Arcata tourism efforts and how you are leveraging regional food and art to create a unique visitor attraction. And shortly after Shoshanna's, we're going to introduce Eric Vollmer from Eureka's Old Town Haunted History Tour. So those are really exciting. And once again, thank you so much for having me share a little bit about Reading, California. And cheers, happy hour.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Shoshanna. I've been working with Arcata Main Street the last little while. During the pandemic, I wandered into a virtual version of a festival in May 2020, and that was exciting. And I've been here since. And we've been going through a lot of reorganizing of our organization, which I think a lot of your groups have done in the last little bit. So it's an exciting moment, a little stressful, a little exciting all at the same time. I've got a cup from our Oyster Festival from a few years ago. That's one of those big events that's happened many years, 32, and now it was virtual, then was very modified and last minute in the craziness of last spring, summer, like coming out of people excited about having a time to come out and about to do things, and yet it being really hard to have the infrastructure for events. But you have a picture there of the Arcata Plaza from our Visit Arcata brochure. There is not a center thing in the middle anymore. There was a statue there many years of President McKinley. It's not there anymore. And now there's not even that planter. So we have a new downtown event space that's smooth all the way in the center. So that's been utilized by a lot of people recently. You're welcome to hop through the next couple of slides, like, give me 10 seconds on each or so, but I just wanted to give a little context. We are a little bit north of Eureka, so a little tucked up in the north. We have beaches here, amazing redwoods, home of the Wiat tribe. There's just very, very little smaller, about 18,000 people or so in Arcata, so a little smaller than Eureka, but keep on going through that next slide, please. The Marsh is a really special thing. We do have the prettiest wastewater treatment facility. The Marsh is a splendid, spectacular, just a glorious showcase to people that come from all over to check it out. It's an amazing bird sanctuary and place to walk through. We have a bike trail that goes from around near the university and then goes all the way through town, and you can go through the marsh with it. There is our forest. We've got banana slugs. You got to come visit those. They're so cute. Rhododendrons forest. But this is all just right out of town. So we've got this community forest as part of Arcata. Next slide, please. And of course, now we have Poly Humboldt. So our Humboldt State University has transitioned to Poly Humboldt, and Arcata is actually the town that is located in. So we are right here where it is, and they're opening up a new campus store just on the plaza in our downtown Arcata. So it's really exciting. It's been really hard to connect with students the last couple of years, which has always been a really important part of town, and trying to make sure students feel comfortable and delighted and happy participating downtown's really, really big. But it's just starting again. We have spring preview coming up soon, and there's that store opening up shortly. They took over a bank, so a whole block has been taken over by that. So there should be a lot of fun. Next slide, please. But downtown, that's where I hang out a lot. We have lots of unique little downtown stores. There's actually a moratorium on fast food restaurants, so you can only have a couple of chain restaurants in our town at all. It's very particular where they are, and none of them are in the downtown area much. There might be one or two, but the much lesser are located here. So it's pretty much all small businesses. There are some franchise businesses, but mostly it's pretty little things. And we have this space that's nice big plaza in the middle of town. So it really lends itself well to events. And Arcata is at the very beginning of its strategic arts plan. Eureka is a great example of a town that has a really established arts plan and has a real established just a focus on the arts. And that street festival is just the most coolest thing ever. And it's really it's fun to be at the beginning of something where Arcata has really been an event hub in the community, but definitely is just gearing up to do more permanent types of infrastructure. But okay, next slide. Thank you. That's the kind of thing Arcata is known for. It's Oyster Festival, big, gigantic 15,000 person festival on the plaza. For me, it's a little overwhelming. I usually do kids events, smaller things, but it's a very big thing where lots of people come to Arcata and pack that plaza and enjoy oysters and beer. A lot of fun. Again, it was virtual a couple of years ago, and then it was very tiny modified, not on the plaza last year. This year, it's kind of another COVID pivot where that size of crowd is daunting, and not having the infrastructure around to support doing that kind of festival, it's really a big thing. And I've noticed that with a lot of the biggest events in communities, that it's hard to get those bigger things going. Again, smaller things, not so hard, but the bigger ones, just the infrastructure is different, or the volunteers are different that you had, or board members might be different, or the people and the knowledge, that institutional knowledge just isn't quite the same. So hopefully next year it'll be back to its normal glory, but this year it's a little modified. Another thing Arcata is well known for is the Kinetic sculpture race. It's been happening for over 50 years. It's an Arcata, Eureka, and Ferndale event across the county, but it's just really exciting to see that come back this year. That is an epic adventure of human-powered art machines that my husband will be racing this year. Wanted to do it a couple of years. Now it's finally happening, but it'll be exciting to see what happens. All those things shoot off bubbles and fire. And so Arcata's a party town with its crazy kinetics. And the lab for a lot of these machines is just down the street from the downtown, so they can come out for parades and be a part of things. Okay, let's see the next one, North Country Fair, another iconic Arcata event. excited to have it back for this year after a couple of years off. That's my daughter there, the butterfly wing. She's a little stilt walker. We have the Samba Parade. It's been a really big tradition in Arcata for the whole length of, I think, 40 years at the North Country Fair. And that's your traditional, it's a harvest festival. It's a changing of the seasons. And really, Arcata is its events. And that's always a thematic event that makes people very happy. Lots of tie-dye, lots of fun. Let's go to the next one. This is fun. The Fairy Festival is my event. That's my, more than the Oyster Festival is one thing, but my land is the Fairy Festival because I love working with kids and bringing creative, magical experiences to little people and families and a more whimsical events. That one's harder to bring back because we have a very small team and that hasn't quite emerged again, but we're doing a May Day event. When they took out the planter in the center of the plaza, I actually had an idea of putting a bollard hole right in the center because they were going to do nothing there. And there's a little hole there. So I've got a hole for a maypole dance now and whatever else we can come up with. So we have a hole in the center of the plaza. It's very great so far as a starting point. People couldn't agree on what to do there, but it'll be lovely. Yay. And our farmers market is not run by our main street, but by the North Coast Growers Association that puts on events across the whole county all over. And the Saturday farmers market, though, on the plaza is always a sparklingly marvelous experience. And for some of the big gigantic festivals, it has to move to a side street, but pretty much throughout the entire year, it is a staple of the culture and community downtown. And something people have really, really enjoyed for, I think it's the longest running, continually running certified farmers market in California. So it's pretty cool. Next one, and this was my favorite thing that I did in 2020. We made our plaza into a haunted house pretty much and decorated it into quadrants. And then we let people, they had to stay in their cars. So we had to have spectator-free event plans that were just a ridiculous thing you had to wrap your mind around. But I really tried hard to make events still happen in some capacity. But this one, we had, it was like an inside-out event where no one was on the plaza, but my performers made a giant spider up there. So much cool stuff. But we backed up free traffic to the freeway. And in our small town, having to wait in traffic for an hour was hilariously disgruntling to many children. they don't like waiting more than 5 minutes, but it was great. There were people up there really, really late and enjoying that. So that was a fun one to be a part of. We didn't do it this year, but we have more of a festival vibe. So we've been able to go ahead in the next one. We've been able to make things happen. Oh, this is the Creamery District. This is the other section of town that's right just a couple blocks from downtown. But the house of my favorite building, this giant old creamery building that's about 120 years old. We've done some cool, that's a street mural that wasn't permitted. We just did it. And then they were threatening to repaint it. And we said, no, we'll chain ourselves to the ground. You can't possibly chain over this mural. So we've redone it a few times. Now they have a process that you can do that sort of shenanigans with. But this is the area of town where our Oyster Festival will be this year on the other side of the building. And if we go to the next one, we can see how we've been able to do events this last year. And really the COVID safe outdoor events grant program is something that our city and a community development department came up with. They were interested in partnering either with Arcata Main Street or with the Playhouse, which is an organization in the Creamery District there, but to give some staffing and resources to help people make outdoor events happen. So that has been able to accommodate some permitting fees. And we have a stage and we have a really cool canopy tent and a circus tent is actually going up this weekend in a field here. It's a 40 by 80 foot circus tent that'll provide basically an outside but covered venue for a lot of events going from this weekend through June. And we were going to take it up and down a few times, but it's going to be pretty epic to put it up and down. So we're going to have a party tent of all party tents in Arcata, which has really unlocked the ability. It's unlocked people's hesitation to put on events. I've been trying to keep little things going on all the time to keep it a little tiny party consistently burning so that when there have been tourists coming to Arcata, because it's not so hot and it's not so wildfirey and it's not so it's far away from everything, but it's not but it's been very attractive to people. I mean, I'm sure everyone living in Redding loves Redding, but sometimes they come out to Arcata because they're hot and it's a little cooler out here on the coast. So sometimes we have some people looking for events. Even in the middle of the darkest moments of COVID, we had tourists coming to Arcata. So having a little something happening for them has been nice. Okay, so that's the next one. You guys have one more on there. And then the other one that we've been trying to do is the Visit Arcata website. We've been trying to add a lot more to the business resources, the business directory there. And just been working recently on having an events calendar for the whole city to be able to use. And if we can get a little, get a little development in it, we can have more features, and trying to have more kiosks in places around town that people can find information if they're downtown. Arcata is also working on a community ambassador program that will be partnering more with our Main Street group to help to alleviate some challenges and problems that business owners and property owners are feeling around town, and also to help them people know what's going on and where they can get a great bagel, which is of course Los Bagels. And now we have a new coffee shop near downtown that's got Dick tailored chocolate mochas that are just so good. So you can get, it's really, really nice. So that they just get into all the tasty places. So being so close to Eureka, right here in Humboldt County, we really have so many great businesses and local products to celebrate. And our Oyster Festival event is definitely one that we're so excited to bring people back out for a party. We're having a 3-day event this year. So we have oyster tasting and judging the first day. And then the second day is an evening kickoff to the event with the whole showcase of local food products and oyster farmers and aquaculture and our beverages. And then we get to party all day Saturday in a festival that's not quite as gigantic as usual, but pretty super fun with lots of music and food and deliciousness. I think we just have one more on there. Oh, I think I've got two. There's one that just like, there was a nice little word board that I was a part of, and people put in the words they thought of when they come up with Arcata. And I thought that was kind of fun. It's got some fun things in there. But yeah, we hope that you are able to come and join us soon. And this week's a pretty special one for us because we haven't had developing memberships for a while. We've been really trying to make it accessible at all price ranges with at a sliding scale that can go as low as $10, but just try and get people excited about participating and being a part of the organization. And we have a ball we're putting on tomorrow. So we have an downtown Arcata ball at the Arcata Theater Lounge, this beautiful, cool theater space that one of our board members manages, letting us do it there. And we have this black, white, and metallic ball. So while we're finishing up the conference tomorrow, I might be getting fancy and dressed up for that in my ball gown, but we're working on the silent auction for that right now. But it's fun to have something sweet happening, and a lot of employees at businesses downtown are excited about coming. We have all of our members tickets, and some other people are just coming for it. So if you're in town, if you want to come up and visit Arcata and visit Eureka and just like drive up 101 real quick, you could join us for a ball. We'll let you come to it too. So you can Zoom from our office and during the conference and then party. But yeah, any questions about Arcata, or gonna come up here for our ball? But it's so delightful. Thanks so much for having me be here.
I want to go, Shoshanna. Can
You
you hear
should
me?
come. Yes, I can hear you. You should come, please.
This is Eric Vollmers.
Oh, sorry, I'm just giving someone a key there so they can get a generator of my car for the circus tent. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, I don't know if you guys can see me. It says tiger in the black square. So I don't know how to get the picture on there. That's part of my old email from when Shoshanna and I were both at Arcata High School. It was the tigers back there.
Go Tigers.
Well, we can certainly hear you, and you're up next, Eric. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, we got. I'm not a promotional tourism person, but we sure like bringing people into Old Town, and I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk a little bit about what we do.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Shoshanna, for giving us such a fantastic rundown of all of the local tourism efforts that Arcata Main Street is known for and is working on. And next, we wanted to bring it back to our host community of Eureka, and very excited to have Eric Vollmers join us and do a kind of mini virtual version of the Old Town Haunted History Tour. So Eric, you're here. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us some interesting history about Eureka. And when you're ready for me to move on to the next slide, please just say next slide, and I got you.
Okay, I don't know how to get the picture up. I'm not trying to hide or anything. I'm really here, but I'm not sure what button to push, and I'm afraid that if I, try to do something that you might lose my voice. So I'll just kind of move on, okay, a little bit.
No problem. Works for us.
Yeah, that is me there, standing by the marina. A lot of times people ask how I got started in this. And it's kind of crazy. My sister had gone to San Francisco and did a ghost tour. And she said, you ought to do that in Old Town Eureka. It's perfect. I said, well, no. you'd have to be crazy to do something like that. And I sat on it for a few months, and then I went downtown one day and I went to the Oberon Saloon, and I met the owner, Roy Cole. We started talking about the building's wonderful history, and he started talking about the woo-woo. And that day I essentially went on a pub crawl, and I went around and I visited all sorts of businesses. And that night I went home and wrote up a 15-page script. We took a graduate history class and their professor out, and they really liked it. A bunch of educators, and they really liked it. We turned it into a little business. There's no employees, and there's, nothing too difficult about it. We do have waivers and, insurance things, not a whole lot. We keep it pretty small, pretty simple, but my goodness, I can't believe we actually get as much business as we want. This time of year, I'm getting several calls each day from folks either living here or folks that are passing through. It's more of a hobby, I guess, than it is a job. We meet at a local coffee shop, Old Town Coffee and Chocolate. So a couple of you at least know of that. And then we take off from there, and we cover about a mile, 12 or 13 different businesses and buildings. And we're telling the stories that have been shared with us about things that are happening and in those places. And then we've done research to find out what may have happened in those places in the past that could be related to what's being reported in the present. And we found out a lot of interesting correlations. And so maybe we'll kind of just get going. What I do, let's stay at that first slide just for a second. Okay, I don't know if you can go back. I have a start my video post in the middle of my screen. I don't think I'm going to push it though.
If you push it, I think it'll show your face.
Oh, all right, let's try it. I pushed it. Hey, there I am with my glasses and everything. Okay, well, now you can see me. So what we do is we gather up there at the coffee shop, we walk down to the marina, and I ask people to kind of try to forget about everything they did all that day. And maybe you guys can try that right now, just for a minute. I take a deep breath, and I ask folks to imagine what it would be like to be at this spot 160 years ago. What might they see? A busy harbor bringing supplies to the northern gold mines, Trinity and Shasta County. A Native American village out on the island in the bay, Tulawat. Had been there for over 1,000 years, soon to be destroyed. A land with a forest unlike anything they'd ever seen. And home? Where would home be? Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So from the position that we're standing on the waterfront, and actually so you can get a better view of it, let's go to the third slide just briefly. And you can see in the two buildings here, the one in the background is right at the foot of F Street. It's right on the marina. That's where we'd be standing. Now let's go back to slide 2. From that position, we can see this is William Carson's mansion. And I tell folks, where would home be? Some would make it big, while others would meet with a more unfortunate fate. And I'll kind of give you my spiel. I think tonight I'm going to share stories with you, some of them historic, some of them paranormal, some of them a little bit of both. And in the end, you'll decide what you want to believe. But one thing we know for sure, you'll never forget Eureka's other side of history. And then we begin the tour really from there. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so from that position that we're standing, we can see this building that says Whiplash Curves right out in front of it. That's actually the oldest standing building on the bay side of First Street in Old Town Eureka. It was built by 1869 by Hans Heinrich Bühner, who was the first European to actually bring a boat into the harbor when they were exploring the region in 1850. He decided to stay in the area, and he did quite well. He set up a business, and set up a towing business where he'd help ferry ships in and out of the harbor. And by the early 1860, he'd done quite well. He was an immigrant from Denmark and decided to go back to Denmark, get his betrothed Mary and bring her out. by 1865, they were one of the most established families in Eureka. This was his merchandise building at that time. And there's a photo there. You can see the captain, his two eldest children, and his wife, Mary. Now, on that pub crawl that day when I started this out, this is one of the businesses I knocked on the door. And the owners of the building, actually, the Maxim family, and Robert Maxim answered the door, and I explained what I was up to. And he said, well, he said, Eric, I don't know that we have any ghosts here, but the presence of the captain is felt around us all the time. Would you like to go upstairs? I said, sure. So we went up the stairs, and you can see it's a two-story building. At the top of the stairs, there's a portrait of the captain, and the whole building, and you can see it's quite long if you looked on the left side there. The whole upper story is filled with personal items. It's a museum of all sorts of things from Humboldt Bay and Eureka. And we walked along, and we came to the back end of the building, which looks out over the bay. And I asked Robert if he'd ever heard of Captain Booner's tragic loss of his wife, Mary. He said he hadn't, so I proceeded to tell him the story, which I'll tell you right now. You see, in 1865, if you had money and you had a wife and she liked to shop, the place to go was San Francisco by ship. And Mary and her two older daughters in 1865 went to San Francisco. On the way back, the word came their boat was coming in, and the captain took his tow out to help ferry them into the harbor. And Mary got up on top, on the back of the boat to see her husband. She couldn't see him very well. And the history gets a little fuzzy here. But somehow at that point, some say there were scuff marks on the boat. Some say a board had popped. Somehow she ended up in the waters of the bay, which are very cold and very swift as the tide moves in and moves out. The captain cut his tug free. He circled twice. His first mate went into the water to try to get her, could not get her. The captain actually grabbed her clothing twice, it tore away. And of course, she would have been wearing the bustles and the long dresses of the time period. And she went down drowned in the waters of the bay, and the ship came in at half mast. The whole community, was mortified by the whole event. But as I stood there looking out the window at the back of the building toward the bay, I couldn't help wonder if the presence of the captain was something imagined, or could it be something real? And that's what I used to tell my clients when they come on the tour, and it kind of ended it. I tell them, come here in the evening when it's dark sometime, and you just might see the shadowy figure of a man looking for his lost wife, Mary. Well, then I received phone calls, and I got a call from the owners of the Whiplash Curves one day, and they said, do you know anything about the building? I said, a little bit. Would you come down? Sure. So I came down, and they began to explain that there was things going on they couldn't figure out. They'd hear pacing going back and forth upstairs, and nobody was there. And Bonnie, the head jeweler and owner of the business, she said one day she was working in the back, no wind, no earthquake, nothing like that. And she had a snow globe on her desk that just moved across the desk and fell to the ground and broke. And then they began talking back and forth, the women that were working there, because they'd all felt something, and they were debating whether it was female or male. They said one Friday night, they heard footsteps upstairs, and they called Robert. Hey, Robert, are you upstairs? And he said, no, he'd locked up about 5. He wasn't there. Nobody could have been there, but yet they're telling me they heard it. Robert's mother, one time, she told me they used to leave a hot cup of coffee at the head of the stairs for the spirit of whoever was there. We don't know. Now, one of the things that we do in Old Town Haunted History Tours is we're sharing the stories. We're not hunting ghosts. We're not trying to find them. We're just sharing the stories of what's going on, what's being reported to us, and what may have happened in the past that could link to it. So these, we get all sorts of updates, and we get a lot of sensitive people on the tour. We had one medium on the tour, and she said she sensed the presence. She said she wasn't from here and she didn't know the story. She said that she sensed the presence of 2 spirits, a man upstairs looking out toward the bay, and a woman downstairs looking toward the street, totally soaked. Then I got another call, because this is really a story about 3 potential entities that are inhabiting or hanging around this area, or maybe they're traveling spirits. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're still on our first story. We're still down here at the foot of S Street. This building on the right's a fabulous building, wonderful restaurant, apartments upstairs, beautiful view of the marina across the way. But in the old days, if you look at the photo down on the lower right, that was a warehouse building with a living unit up on top that burnt in the 1970s. It was originally owned by another sea captain named Walter Coggeshall, sometimes referred to as Old Man Coggeshall. If you look at the photo up to the left, you can see people loading onto vessels there to get, what's happening there is a lot of workers that worked on a mill across the bay would be ferried back and forth by Captain Coggeshall on one of his ferries. Captain Coggeshall died in 1935. I received a phone call from a gentleman that lived in the warehouse, was still standing in the 1970s. He said it was a party house. They said the old man was always there, always watching him. And he gave me a couple of names of others that were there, and I spoke with them, and they said, oh yeah, he was there. He says, and if he didn't like you, he'd do things to you. He'd lock you in the closet or he'd do different things. If you liked you, it was okay. An old friend of mine lived upstairs during that period of time. Some of you, if you're local here, might know him, Bill Wing. But he and his fiance were living upstairs, and he said he was there. He said it was good. He said he thought the captain kind of liked them, and he was gone a lot. And Melissa, his fiance, was there alone a lot. And kind of felt that the captain was looking over him. He said one day all the paper towels, all the toilet paper, all the windows, shades, everything all came down all at once. It was the captain. Well, the place burnt down in the late 70s. And then the reincarnation was this exact replica of the building you see there today. That burned down as well. And that got people to thinking, well, maybe the old man's still kind of looking out over his place. And then they rebuilt it again. And for a while, there was a little taffy shop in the corner. And one day I popped in there and I said, hey, you guys notice anything unusual ever here? And they said, well, they had a boat full of taffy, literally a boat full of little pieces of taffy. And they said, well, we clean up really good every day, and we come home or when we come back in the morning, there's little pieces of taffy stuck up and around in all this different place. And I told them, you must have rats. And he said, no, we don't have rats. We think it's a ghost. So, hey, who knows? And I had another meeting on the tour one evening, and she raised her hand and she said, it's none of them. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. She said, it's none of them. It's Captain Erickson. And I said, oh boy, I threw my hands up and said, we don't know anything about Captain Erickson, but my name's Eric. She said, well, he's upset because all the others are getting all the attention. I thought maybe she was teasing me. But a little while later, I don't know, it was sometime later, we were doing some research on this whole thing, and we were reading a book, Ship Captain's Odyssey. It was a story about Captain Booner. And in there was a story about a rescue attempt that took place out in the entry of the bay. And the captain was a guy by the name of Newt Erickson. It was 1875. The ship ran aground. There were 6 guys on board. They rescued one of them. It was getting toward evening. They thought all was going to be okay. And then the ship's mast broke. The ship flipped, and the other 5 drowned, including Captain Newt Erickson. Later that spring, on a place that's now called Booner Point, towards South Eureka, a bottle was found on the shore by a gentleman, picked it up, looked inside, and there was a message from Captain Erickson. It said, all gone, tell my people, Newt Erickson. Now, we don't know if this medium had really kind of looked this up and planned to say something about something she didn't really know I was going to talk about, or whether she really did channel Newt Erickson. We don't know for sure. We're just telling the stories. And that, folks, is really the first story on our journey. And then we begin to walk around this fabulous old town. And if you have an old town, I hope you have something like this. Because it's really a lot of fun. It does bring people into the community, and they spend money, they buy drinks and buy dinners, and actually are renting places in some of the establishments that are along the way. Let's click the next slide. So I was asked to tell some stories, so that's what I'm doing. I hope this is going okay for you guys. This is a picture of the Oberon Grill. I mentioned it earlier. This was my first stop when I first started thinking about doing this tour. Sat down at the bar next to the owner and started hearing wonderful stories about the history of the building. during the Great Depression. They sold bootleg alcohol there. Up here, they see a picture of this young guy on the left, that's Jack London. Behind him, you can't see through the photo, and just to the left, there's a trap door, still there. You can go into that trap door and go down below underneath the bar. It was the room where they used to hide the booze. Up behind the chandelier on the right, there was a brothel. The brothel was run by a madam named Ruby Smith. They now call the room the Ruby Room in her honor. A lot of history. They tried to rebuild the bar as similar as they could to the original bar, which is this photo that you see in the middle. And you see the chandelier hanging there, very similar to the chandelier that's hanging now, although it is not the original chandelier. Since Jack London's photos here, I'll tell you a quick story about him. He actually did visit this place on a trip, I think it was 1911. He was driving through the Northern California. I think he actually went up into Oregon and then came down. But he was a socialist, and Eureka was a booming lumber town. Having a drink or two and understanding a little bit about who he was, he got an argument with a soon-to-be Redwood robber baron, I would call him perhaps, Stanwood Murphy, who was a young man at that time, but later owned one of the largest redwood firms in the country, Pacific Lumber. They got in a fist fight in the bar. 3 guys were there. They swore not to say anything. One guy did tell on his deathbed, said they fought for an hour. And the only thing I can imagine is that they might have, raised their fist for 10 minutes, stopped and had a whiskey, raised them again, stopped and had another one. And this thing went on for an hour. We did have the members of the Stanwood family there once, and they did verify that this occurred, even though it was never in the papers. There was, Jack London was supposedly under the weather for a day or two. They said that Jack London was a better fighter than their great-grandfather, but he was an angry Irishman that refused to stay down. We like to tell that story, but it's really the woo-woo story that you're here to hear about. And there's so many, and we get updates with this place, so it's hard to tell them all. I guess if we go back, we can talk about some of the original owners. 1910, a gentleman by the name of Dick Tierney owned this building, and he lost his license in New Year's Eve for selling a man a drink after midnight. And so he turned the bar over to his wife, Alice. Well, the city said, Alice is a woman, she couldn't run a bar. She wasn't even supposed to really be in a bar, but somehow she did. She ran it for decades. And some of the people that are there have experienced, actually a lot of them have experienced seeing a presence, a spirit, an entity that's female, actually 2 different time periods with females in the building. And one of the bar managers who said she was sensitive, felt like she heard the name trying to come to her. First letter was like A. That's when we did a little research. We found out about Alice. Things began to happen, and she really felt Alice might still be there looking over her interests in the bar. Roy had a waitress, cocktail waitress, one time. She went upstairs and she came down and she said, "When did you guys get that mannequin?" She said she'd seen a female mannequin upstairs. He said, "We don't have a mannequin. They never had one." An interesting thing, it's kind of a well, it's a little PG of a story, I guess. When they were remodeling upstairs, they got down to the wood floor level and there was holes in the floor, and they couldn't figure out what these little holes were doing in the floor. And an old timer came by and he said, that's where they put the stakes. They put wooden stakes in those holes. And they asked him why they put those there. And he said that because that's where they hung the sheets that separated the cribs that the prostitutes were working in that room. That's all that separated them, was wooden stakes and sheets. They weren't too worried about privacy in that case. Anyway, the breakfast cook has seen a woman at the top of the stairs and then she's gone. There are guests that have seen, they had felt like their plates and silverwares have moved around. One day the head chef came out and he said, "You wouldn't believe what happened last week." He said the pots and pans came off the wall and their serving tray moved all the way out to the door like somebody was pushing it by itself. They were all just astounded. We have another theory about who the second person might be. And we usually talk about that when we go outside. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. Well, you see it says Carson Block Building, Opera Alley, Ingomar Theater. This building in the forefront on the right, lower right hand photo, that's actually the Carson Block Building built by William Carson, whose mansion you saw earlier. And he loved the opera. In fact, he loved the opera so much he wanted Eureka to have something equal to anything on the West Coast. And he built what you can see there, the top story of which is still in the building. And he named it the Ingomar Theater after his favorite opera, Ingomar the Barbarian. And now the mansion is actually a private club called the Ingomar Club. But that's not really what we're here to talk about, although they say, the people that run this now, the Northern California Indian Development Council, they say they think Willie's still in there, that he's running around. But what we're here to talk about still is the Oberon and what might have happened in the Oberon. Who are these two female spirits? And if you see that arrow coming down on the photo on the right, there's an arrow coming down that's pointing at a tall chimney. It's a brick chimney that goes up. Well, in 1933, Eureka had one of its big earthquakes and chimneys came down all over town. That chimney you're seeing there landed on the back of the Oberon. At that time, Ruby had moved her brothel to the building next door, and there was a family living there, the McCutcheon family. The father, Mr. McCutcheon, put himself over his young son, and he suffered some broken ribs. But Ethel McCutcheon, the wife, was the only death in that earthquake. And when the rescuers came, there's an alley here between the two places. That's why it's called Opera Alley, because of the Opera House. When the rescuers came, they found her underneath the bricks from the chimney with her legs dangling out. The newspaper wrote a strange occurrence occurred because one of the windows had broken in a silhouette of a woman, and they had a photo of it there. Now we started thinking, could it be Mrs. McCutcheon, who's one of the women that's seen in the back of the Oberon Saloon? Once again, we had another medium come through, and she said, oh yeah, it's her. She said, but it's okay, because she likes to come and go and remember the good times she had with her family when she was there. So we continue to walk through Old Town. This building has been renovated almost exactly like that original picture that you see, except the chimney at the top now is metal instead of brick. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. This is now called the Inn at 2nd and C. It's another one of beautiful buildings in Old Town Eureka. For a long time, it was known as the Eagle House. Before that, it was known as the Bon Gusto. It was built in 1886 by a gentleman named Roy Tonroth. He had it for a number of decades. By the 1920s, a couple of Italian immigrants own it, Domingo Catarigli and Joseph Massey. They ran it until both of them were dead by 1933 when Georgia Massey began to run the operations, and she ran it until her death until 1950. Georgia was quite an imposing figure, I guess. She would stay in the bar. She had a cane. She'd pound that cane when things got a little rowdy and everybody had settled down. She made sandwiches for a lot of the Italian immigrants that stayed there and would go to work, and she would chastise them if they didn't send some money back home to the old country, to their families back then. And some people think that maybe she's still there. She liked to occupy room 19, which is above the restaurant on the corner there in room 19. When I first started, once again, I was on that pub crawl and I went into the restaurant bar. At the time, it was Gallagher's. And I sat down next to a gentleman who was living in the building. He was painting the building. And if you look at the photo in the upper right-hand side, you see there's a couple of stories there. In the back right-hand side, back in there, he is where he was staying. Some kind of rather infamous rooms back there, room 24 and 25. He said, oh yeah, the place is haunted. He said, pictures are tipped all the time and there's cold spots in the hallway. And about that time, the waitress walked by and she goes, oh, my cousin used to be a maid upstairs. She'd never go up to room 24 by herself. So I introduced myself to the manager of the building. Betty was her name. And she said, well, would you like to go up to room 24? And I said, sure. So she took us up and she said, she said the spirits are around. She said, nothing malevolent, just mischievous. And she said she'd had every room in the building smudged to try to clean it out. We had one guest that said they need to do it again. But we went into room 24 and she told us a story about how the beds would be made and they'd come back and nobody had been there, and she'd open up and the beds would be mussed up. And how guests said you would hear voices all night. She had one couple stayed in room 25, and she said that the wife was taking a bath in the clawfoot tub. She thought her husband was scrubbing her back. She turned around, nobody was there. You know, stories like that. And we walked out and I asked her, I said, Benny, do you really think there's ghosts here? And she kind of raised her eyes and says, do you want there to be? And I got a chill down the back of my spine, just from the way she said it. But the stories go on and on. From people working downstairs and seeing a female spirit moving along the balcony there that you can see in the photo, to more and more stories in room 24 and 25. I know I'm going to run out of time, so I'm not going to go into too many of those stories, but I can tell you that the building in 1983 looked quite different. This third story that you see in the front here, that was added, I think, during the 1950s. I'd have to look at my notes, but the building at that time was not as wide. This area that you're looking at in the photo in the right front, there's a stained glass ceiling there. That whole area was open space. The building, it was not one building. There was a building to the left, which was Eagle House. And today when you go in there, you can see that the wall on the inside left of this room is actually an exterior wall, or was at one time. To the right, there was another building. Early on, it was called the First Chance Hotel. Well, and first chance at what? We're not sure, because one way of understanding the early growth of Eureka was by counting the number of saloons in town. In 1865, there was 6. By 1875, there was 21. By 1895, there was 43. And by 1909, there was 56 saloons and 32 brothels. It was a lot for a small town. And it was busy. On Friday nights, hundreds of loggers came into town, dropped off, would party till the tea kettle steam whistle would blow, and they'd try to make their way back and get back to their logging camps. It was a busy place, and some of that energy, no doubt, has stuck. Later on, that backside building was known as the Maria 123 and did have a rather unsavory reputation. In 1983, the buildings were connected into what you see now, where you have this large general area, and recently it was sold again. The new owners have named it now the Inn at Second C, the historic Eagle House. They've done a wonderful job of remodeling the place. It's beautiful, and just like before, every room is really unique, full of Victorian era furniture, freestanding armoires. It's amazing. I always recommend people stay there, and I just tell them you might have a little extra company. And people do book here just to see if they can have that experience. The new owners, when they first came, decided that they would go through again and try to cleanse the place, and they did. And they said, we did it right, so there won't be anything now. 2 weeks later, one of their carpenters decided he was going to stay in room 24. They had re-smudged it all. Stayed there 5 nights. For 4 nights, nothing happened. On the 5th night, he said he'd had vivid dreams all night, and he woke with hands he felt pushing on his neck, pushing him down into bed. He couldn't explain it. They had other workers who said they had brought their children with them, and they said their children were complaining that somebody was pulling their hair, but there was never anybody there that was pulling their hair. And then they had, the new owners have one member of the family who's pretty sensitive. And she had been visiting, and she had imagined or felt the presence, and actually envisioned a gentleman. And we've had stories about a gentleman escorting us out, watching us, kind of watching over us in the building several times. And he would have been standing in the balcony, kind of to the left of the corner there by room 23. And she described him and said she thought he might have had something to do with finances. And not too long after that, somebody brought in a photograph. This photograph that you can see of this gentleman down on the bottom left, his name was Charles Perron. They showed it to their family member, and they said, oh my God, that's the guy. That's the guy that she envisioned and seen. And so we wonder, he actually had run a liquor business in what is now the attached bottom side of that photo that you're looking at. It's now a bar that's attached to the building called Fancy Klein's. Well, his photo's in there. They think that he's a guy that's still hanging around up there by room 23, where reportedly there was also a murder-suicide and hanging in the stairwell, the haunted stairwell things. I can go on. I mean, the stories are incredible, and there's so many. I like to tell folks, Eureka per capita might be the most haunted town on the West Coast. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's go to the next slide.
Eric,
Okay.
thank you so much. How are we doing on time, Miss Alicia and Amanda?
Yeah, we are coming to a close. I don't know if you have too many more slides, but we
This
really
is
did-
it.
Okay,
This is it. You had like
Perfect.
6,
Perfect.
7 slide spaces,
All
and I
right.
think I sent you 8. So this
All right.
is just a kind of an interesting little slide. If you look carefully at it, and I get people send me pictures, they go on a tour, this and that. This one on the right is a mirror there that's no longer there. You really kind of have to look. But if you look at that and you look at the bottom of that, and I don't know if you can see it, I can hardly see it on my computer, that there's a woman in that, the head of a woman, like a bust. But if you get it in the right light, you can see it more carefully. That woman's head is actually a skull. You can see her eyes, you can see her nose, you can see her mouth. She's got her hair on top of her head. And then possibly something else up on top, I'm not sure. Across the street, there's Manitoba's music. There's a gentleman in there that says he's very sensitive, and there was something in the back of the building. One day he felt it, and he took his camera and he reversed the camera, pointed it behind him, and he took that shot that you see there in the misty just a misty, what he called, that was it. That was the presence. That was the spirit. He felt it. He took that photo. That's what he saw. Once again, we're just telling the stories. We're not trying to find anything. We talk a lot about history. We love our buildings. We love our old town. We love bringing people in. And it's called Old Town Haunted History Tours for a reason, because it's not going to just be one old town. We're halfway through writing our first book, and we hope to do this in other areas. So if you have an old town and you think that this might be something you're interested, give me a call and tell you a little bit more detail what we do. Who knows? Okay, that's my spiel. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you. Eric, Shoshanna, thank you so much for that happy hour. If you guys want to write in the chat how people can learn more about your programs, that would be great. And we're going to pass this back over to Amanda and Alicia. Thank you guys for a great happy hour.
You bet.
Thank you, guys. I must come and do the tour up there. I am excited to hear more of the ghost stories and see all of these historic buildings. So thank you so much.